Diabetes ain't no match for discipline. My baby brother died.
Part two is about my personal health and my journey. There's a lot that I don't talk about. I just kind of talk about when it basically got to a critical point. Now, because of my dad dying early, I would regularly go in to my doctors and, tell them my family history when I was having these symptoms. And I was having these symptoms for 20 years, just kind of constantly being hungry and never really being able to get satisfied. So I was eating, 7-8 times a day. And it didn't really matter when I was, I guess, prior to 35 or something like that. But about, around 36, something like that, it just went into hyperdrive, and I found myself just really needing to eat all the time, not sleeping through the night because I'm waking up to eat. And I put on it seemed like 35 pounds overnight, and then ultimately it ended up being about like 40, 50 pounds. I was working out all of the time, so I might have looked like I was fit, but I felt horrible. And it was crazy because when I would go in, I get tested, all of my records and stuff would show that they'd be like, oh, you're okay. I did meet with a doctor one time when I was at Stanford, and she was one of the most knowledgeable people that I talked to, and she was like, look, what we do tests the extremes, and because your father was at the extreme and your brother is at the extreme, we know how to test the extremes, we know how to deal with the extremes. But because you're not showing up, basically what you're doing is the best thing that you can do, like monitor your diet and exercise and keep doing the research. Because I actually brought up gut health to her, just telling her that I had noticed that my symptoms were calmer when I was eating kimchi. So even this was a situation where my own sort of personal agency and research initiated this more in-depth conversation with my doctor. That's just the way it was. I was not getting answers for what I was suffering through. I'd take all of the tests and everything, and nothing was coming back. And then when I finally did put on all this weight and started to show up as pre-diabetic, then it was like, well, what are you doing to get the weight off? But I was still not getting any real answers to, how to be well. Meeting with a nutritionist was useful in terms of me being vegan and learning that, I need to make sure that I'm getting like good proteins and fats and things like that, so that I'm not as hungry, to offset the fact that a lot of vegans and vegetarians end up on these carb-heavy diets. And so that was useful. Other than that, it was just really like a personal search that I had to go on. And so that's what part two is about, and just sort of the insights about my, I guess, family history and family traits, just from what observation could tell me, and in the situations where, what we were getting from our healthcare wasn't giving us enough. And, me sort of putting on my PhD hat and realizing that, while I, did all of this, research with rappers in the brain and all this stuff, and it might have seemed sexy, it gave me a certain comfort with reading scientific articles about, I guess in the hard sciences. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a biologist or whatever, but I'm fine with reading that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know everything the first time I'm reading it, but I'll go and I'll look at these studies, I'll look at hundreds of them, just to get an understanding of my situation, my family situation. I wish I had started to do this sooner. There's stuff that's been around since the 60s that might have helped my father and my brothers have a better life. And I only found those things out recently. So, that's what the part two is about. Made another set of these pull-ups.
See, I always took things real literal. You always heard rappers talking about being in the lab, writing, dropping science. I think my work is what my predecessors always intended.